And welcome back, students, as we get into our next lesson. Today, as we continue our discussion of class definitions, we're going to discuss parameters of a primitive type. So when we start discussing parameters, recall previously that all methods we have constructed have no parameters. And you might wonder, well, what does it mean? Well, this is indicated by the empty set parentheses inside of our method heading. So for example, if I had a method which was like get date, it may not have anything in it, or it could, which is what we're going to look at today. Now, a parameter is simply like a blank that's filled in with a particular value when the method is invoked. The value that's plugged in for that argument is called the argument. Now, we've actually already been using arguments, for example, with predefined methods. So, for example, since now print line hello world, the hello world part is the argument. It's what is being passed from the program into that method call. Now, as we start examining methods with parameters, you can see in our date third try and date third try demo in the lesson materials, they have a method called set date. All right, set date has three parameters: new month, new day, new year. It also contains the definition of a method called month string, which has one method of type int. Now, if we look at date third try demo, we can also see that the values 6, 17, and year are plugged in then for new month, new day, and new year. So, for example, date.set, date 6, 17, year. All right. When we have a method just as the one above, the argument, which is a 6, is plugged in for the corresponding formal value, such as new month, everywhere that parameter occurs within the method definition. So anytime, it's just like it's another variable. It's going to plug it in wherever it sees that variable. And the nice thing about this too is that you can notice like this is a hard cast number, this is a hard cast number, but you'll notice that this is year, which means that this here is a variable inside of the demo. And we'll look at that in a minute here. Now, after all your arguments have been plugged in for the corresponding parameters, the code in the body of your method is executed. Now, form parameters arguments, the following invocation of the method month string occurs within the definition of the method set date. Month equals month string, new month. The argument is new month, which is plugged in for the parameter month number in the definition of the method month string. You'll note that each of the formal parameters must be preceded by a type name, even if there's more than one parameter of the same type, all right, because you want to differentiate which one it might be. All right, type conversion. Yes, there is type conversion that can happen in method parameters as well. Corresponding arguments must match the type of their corresponding parameters, although Java will do some type conversion for things such as int into double. Just like we have, like, for example, when we're just doing, for example, system out of print line statements and we're trying to convert, integer to double operations. We can do some of that stuff, or double to integer, which, of course, you can't do. So Java automatically performs the following type conversions. So byte to short, short to int to long, and float, long to float, and then float to double. All right, double is the biggest one here, so obviously double does not scale down to any of them. Now, the same type conversion that we discussed all the way back in Chapter 1 for storing variables of another type. All right, just like I mentioned when we were doing just basic arithmetic, same idea here. Now, there is also a precedence that has to be followed. The correlation between parameters and arguments is directly determined by their order in the list in parentheses. So whichever one comes first is technically the one in higher precedence. In a method invocation, there must be exactly the same number of arguments in parentheses as there are formal parameters in the method definition heading. So, for example, the first argument would be plugged in for the first parameter, the second argument plugged in for the second parameter. If you had 3, it'd be 3 for 3, 4 for 4, etc. Now, here's something that you may not have known. Our main method is a void method. Our good old system out of print line back in the early day when we had hello world, and we just looked at the public static void main string args. We're like, well, what is this? Well, it's actually a method. The main method is a void method, as indicated by its heading, public static void main string args. Now, we'll explore what static means pretty much in the next chapter. We'll get a little bit more into what some of that stuff is. But the identifier args is simply just a parameter of the type string array, which is just an array for strings. Now, arrays, of course, are discussed in a later chapter. It's the last chapter of Programming 1, so you don't really have to worry about what that means until then. Now, args, as I mentioned, is a parameter. You could technically replace it with any other non-keyword, and your program will still have the same meaning. So instead of public static void main string args, I could have it say public static void main string goldfish, and it would have the exact same meaning. It's not going to affect how your program runs. The only reason why we use args is because it's kind of like the given convention for making all the main programs. All right, as I just mentioned, a program in Java, that is just a class has a main method. All right, you have to have a main method in order to run your program, because when you give a command to Java, hey, run this application, what the runtime system is going to actually look for is that main method and invoke that. If it doesn't have a main method, it's like, oh, well, this is just a class. It's not the actual execution. All right, call by values. When plugging in parameters or values for a parameter, it is important to note that the only value of the argument is used. All right. Therefore, if an argument uses a variable, the value of the variable is plugged in for the corresponding value. For example, in our date third try demo class, the value of the variable year is not plugged into the body of the method setDate. Because the only value of the argument is used, this is a method of plugging in arguments known as call by value mechanism. In Java, this is the only method of substitution that is used with parameters of a primitive type, such as char and int. Now, a little thing to note, that string, for our purposes, is going to behave in this instance like a primitive type and not a class type. Because remember, in Java, strings are strictly just an object type. However, you look at other programming languages, a lot of times strings are primitive types. Now, as we eventually will learn, this is the only type of substitution that is used with parameters of a class type. However, there are other differences that will make a class type appear to use a different mechanism. All right, parameters as local values. In most cases, you can think of parameters as sort of a blank or placeholder that's filled in by the value of the corresponding argument in the method invocation. We kind of already have talked about this. But remember, parameters are not just blanks. They're actually, if you want to get technical, local variables. They only exist within that method. So when the method is invoked, the value of an argument is computed, and the corresponding parameter is then initialized to whatever value that parameter is. Occasionally, it is useful to use a parameter as a local variable. So in the build class, which is the other demo that we're going to see, shown in the class materials, you'll notice the parameter minutes worked in the method compute fee. The value of minutes worked is changed within the body of the method definition. This is allowed simply because the parameter is a local variable. All right, one quick pitfall: use of the terms parameter and argument. The usage of the terms parameter argument so far has been pretty consistent with what's generally regarded as common usage. However, a word of warning is that sometimes people will use those terms interchangeably. They'll say it's, you're having a parameter or you're having an argument. Therefore, in what we're dealing with, the term formal parameter is often used to describe what we've been calling a parameter, what you have inside of your method. The term actual parameter is used what we've been describing as an argument. So for our purposes, a parameter is what's in the method header, and an argument is what's in your main program that you're passing into that method invocation. All right, so that's the end of that piece there, folks. So let's pop on over to Eclipse and take a look at our programs here now. So here I have date third try. I have my two methods that we talked about earlier. Here's set date. You can see I have int new month, new day, and new year. All right, and all it simply does is set month, day, and year to those pieces there. You'll notice, though, that month is equal to month string new month, and what that does, it calls this method right here. All right, so this is really a helper method, and when it takes a new month and puts it in here, you can see that public string month new month takes a int called month number. Month number, of course, is our new month. So really, we're passing this variable right along. Then, of course, it simply is going to check to see which integer it is and return out a value, setting it into month. All right, and of course, if we look at our date third try demo, you can see in here we have the actual method usage. So here's our method invocation for set date. It's date set date 6/17 year, just like we saw in the notes, and of course our date write output. Running that program. we get June 17, 1882, because if you look, we set the year to 1882, and of course 6 and 17 correspond to June and 17. All right, if we look at our bill program here, you can see we have several methods here. We have input worked, which has no parameters. We have update fee, and output bill, of course, have no parameters as well. But here's our compute fee, which takes in two integer types. We have int hours worked and int minutes worked. And it simply just calculates minutes worked is equal to hours worked times 60 plus minutes worked. All right, then we have int quarter hours is equal to minutes worked divided by 15. And then we return quarter hours times rate, which of course is set right up here. If we look at our exam program, it simply is going to create a new bill. It's going to calculate the time worked, update the fee, and output it. So enter the number of full hours worked followed by a number of minutes. So we're going to enter, and let's just say we worked 40 hours, and let's say we worked 30 minutes. All right. So time worked, 40 hours, 30 minutes. The rate, $150 per hour. Amount due, you can see it's quite extensive. So $24,300. So there we go, folks. That is how those two programs work. You can see how parameters are coming into play here with the different values rather than just being a no arg method. So that being said, that's going to wrap up this lesson for today, folks, and I will see you next time.